All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the work session for the City Council for Monday, April 25, 2022. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Boland.
Here.
Councilmember Galani.
Here.
Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Bros.
Here.
Councilmember Garritano.
Here.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Rainbow.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Nyan. Councilmember Bartoni.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
All right, excellent. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. Before we get to our discussion, we actually don't have any action items. We're going to do some discussion about some items on the agenda. But before we get to that and miscellaneous items, the Birch Forest Drive turnaround, does anyone have any comments or questions relative to the 17 items that we have under information on the agenda? Councilmember Flasher.
What's the process for adding something to the strategic plan?
You would bring it before the council. Council would debate it, and on a motion and second that's passed by a simple majority of those present, it would be added to this strategic plan.
Can I bring in the hard courts into the conversation for the strategic plan? I think it's something that the residents of our city are all looking forward to, but it's not technically on our strategic plan.
Well, I think we have the strategic plan on the agenda for discussion, so that would be in order. You can do that if you want to proceed.
I'd like to add it to the strategic plan.
Okay, do you have a, let's pull that in just a second. Do you have were copies of the strategic plan provided to everyone? I mean, like tonight?
No.
Okay, so if the council wants to add it, would probably get to where we would add it. Have you analyzed the plan enough to?
Yeah, I was looking at it last night, and there's the like green space enhancements and things like that.
Okay.
But there was also up higher parks and things like that. I thought maybe adding it to the general parks stuff might be more appropriate because it's also in that budget typically.
Okay. The city administrator suggested that we bring Joe Vinich into the discussion in case, just to determine whether there may already be dollars for that. Is that okay with you? All right. Mr. Vinich, do you have any thoughts on Councilmember Flasher's suggestion relative to what may already be existing in the strategic plan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, as you know, there is a goal 8, that it describes enhanced green space for the city of Wildwood as one of the strategic planning goals over the next 5 years. The Planning and Parks Committee has spent a great deal of time of late talking about pickleball courts and other hard court surfaces. We have created a design, a couple of them in fact, and we've looked at different estimates in terms of costs for those designs. They range anywhere from $200,000 on up to almost $400,000. In this year's budget, capital improvements program, we have $100,000 for such. And then in 2023, we have another $100,000 for the same. And so from that perspective, we are looking at a hard court surface as a component of the next couple of years. Thank you.
So is the bottom line then, Joe, that it's your position that the idea that Councilmember Flasher is bringing forward is already in the scope of the strategic plan? Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, we have budgeted for the next couple of years. However, at our last Planning and Parks Committee meeting, there was a discussion that the amount of money that might be spent on this particular type of facility really hadn't been identified as part of the strategic planning process. And so I think Councilmember Flasher is trying to address that shortfall, so to speak, and place it as part of the strategic plan and be consistent with what we budgeted. Thank you.
So the answer is then it's not part of the strategic plan, and this approach would be in order. Is that correct?
I believe so, sir, and I would defer to Mr. Cross as well. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this line item is not called out specifically in the 5-year strategic plan. Potentially could be covered under one of the broader categories. And as Mr. Bunich pointed out, goal number 8 is enhancement of green space. So it could potentially fall there, but it is not called out specifically.
Would you want it called out specifically?
I would, because it seems like that's a popular argument against the hard courts, is that it's not on the strategic plan. So I'd love to get it on the strategic plan.
Okay.
I look at it as a park improvement or enhanced green space.
Okay. And Mr. Vintage, can you tell us where specifically in the strategic plan that the category you were discussing moments ago, where that is actually located? What plan number that's under?
Enhanced green space is goal 8 of 8. However, a couple of the park projects were included in the public works, which I believe is goal 4. And given that we do have money budgeted for 2022 and 2023, I would suggest that it be at the higher level or goal 4 versus 8.
What's the title of goal 4?
I believe just public works, sir.
Of course. Okay.
This is not public works.
There was a line that says yeah.
Trail park improvement. Okay. And Councilmember Fleischer, I'm assuming it would be your preference to bring, if this moves forward, to have that as one of the sub items under trail park improvements within broad category 4 public works rather than broad category 8. Is that your?
Yeah, I mean, that's my preference.
Do you want to make that as a motion?
I will make that as a motion.
Is there a second?
To park improvement.
We have a second by Councilmember Bartoni, and you had your hand raised, Councilmember Bartoni.
I mean, my hand was raised to second the motion, and, kind of what Dan says, I think it's just going to kind of tighten up the loop a little bit. That I think everybody's kind of looking forward to this, especially the residents, but this is just going to, give it a little bit more focus that I think that we do need.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Ottenberg?
Would one of the uses for the hard court surface include tennis?
That was an option. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that was kind of holding up the moving forward of the whole process was the last design just had pickleball.
Okay.
Okay. So the hard court could potentially serve as a tennis court.
Tennis, pickleball,
Okay. Councilmember Brost?
Is there a dollar amount attached to the motion? I mean,
It looks like right now it's budgeted at $200,000 between this year and next year, but potentially we could reallocate some funds to get everything that everyone's looking for.
so should the motion state a dollar amount?
Is it, so my understanding is you're asking that this be made part of the dollar amount that's already set forth, or is this?
My goal is just to have it on the strategic plan. It'd be that we all are identifying it as a focus for the city and not just something that we brought out of the blue after doing the strategic plan, which is kind of how it sits right now. That tends to be the argument against it. It's not on our plan that we set forth as a council.
City Administrator, I know you, Steve, you want to mention something, but while you're talking, if you could also let everyone know how the council approached the line items on the strategic plan previously relative to whether they had a specific dollar amount for each one, if you can recall that. If not, we need to probably figure that out. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things, actually. So in response to what you just mentioned, I don't think in the strategic plan, it necessarily has to be called out in dollars, but it can be put on there. And as Mr. Bunich indicated, the current year budget for 2022, the capital improvements budget does include $100,000 this year and another $100,000 next year for pickleball courts. So it could be called out in the strategic plan, a total of $200,000, which would be what's in the plan right now. But I'd ask either Mr. Vunich or Mr. Bartoni, you might want to expand on the last conversation we had at Parks and Planning in terms of the courts themselves. Councilmember Bartoni, just to make sure, because there was a discussion that it did have some courts, then Mr. Vunich was asked to go back and redo some of you may recall that conversation, including or excluding tennis, excluding basketball courts. And that was still kind of up in the air, as I recall. And I don't know if you want to address that.
Well, I can address it briefly, but I'm going to take one step backwards. With Dan's permission, I would want the strategic plan.
We're having a little trouble hearing you. You got your
Oh,
mic
I'm
on.
sorry. I would want the strategic plan to read hard courts and not pickleball courts, so that it is not just limited to pickleball courts. So
I think that's the intent of the motion.
it is the intent. Okay, I just want to make clarification. Now, that being said, I wasn't able to make the last P&P meeting. So I'll defer to Joe or Joe Farmer, who chaired it for me, as what was discussed last week.
So I think from what we're getting some reverb here. Okay. From what I'm gathering, just from the discussion of the council, I think I'm sensing sentiment to add the hard court. And relative to the tennis aspect of it, or any other aspects of the hard court system, if you will, which admittedly would be a great thing, I would suggest that's probably committee work that the council may not need to do tonight, like a lot of other items in the strategic plan. Certainly, I think everyone agrees that if it's economically feasible or financially feasible and so forth, then the ability to morph into all these different things would be great. But I would suggest that the motion not be muddied at this point. Just keep it simple, that hard courts be added to the strategic plan within the budgetary and on the financial side of it, within the existing budgetary allotment that's already there, under category 4, public works, trail/park improvements, which was the maker of the motion's intent. And I believe the intent of you, Councilmember Bartoni, in seconding it. Maker and second, okay with that? Is there any objection from the council with that being the approach? Okay. Any further discussion? Councilor Rottenberg.
This probably is work for the committee to embark on, but it seems like there should be some type of procedure put in place for determining at what periods of time the courts can be used for the various sports, whether it's tennis, pickleball, basketball, what have you, some type of a reservation system or something of that
So
sort.
that would indeed be committee work.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
the
sure.
the committee has been working on exactly what he mentioned, and it's like all part of the discussion. Look forward to getting to that point.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Just a moment. Okay. Or maybe not. Okay. All right, we'll try it now. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Anything further, Councilmember Flasher?
No, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Anything else under information items before we move forward? All right, seeing none. We have no action items under miscellaneous. We have a receipt and file the Birch Forest Drive turnaround. Mr. Bennett, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, as you know, the Birch Forest Drive Brightleaf Court T turnaround is underway and construction has begun. As part of that process, there was a commitment made by City Council to the residents in the area to soften the appearance of that T turnaround And that would be done through the implementation of a landscaping plan. The landscaping plan has been developed by TerraSpec, Ken Keitel, a landscape architect. And the landscape plan was presented to the Planning and Parks Committee at its last meeting this past Tuesday. The committee endorsed the plan and agreed to allow it to be presented for receipt and filing tonight at City Council. The plan, for the most part, addresses the desire of the nearby residents, and that primarily amongst their request was that there be substantial screening both in the direction of the new cul-de-sac and the former stub street that serves Birch Forest Drive. The department believes that by the use of the types of plantings, again, not native, that is achieved along with protecting the soil as well as providing a low-cost maintenance item for the future. So again, this particular item is for receipt and file. If there are any questions regarding the committee's action, Mr. Farmer, who chaired the meeting, or I can certainly try to address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments relative to this item? Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, this is kind of a complicated question because it's partly on this and it's partly on the general session. But Joe, I noticed the budget adjustment is taking some of the funding away from the landscaping. So is there going to be enough funds to complete the landscaping as planned?
That's a very good question. We have an estimate from TerraSpec in the range of about $22,000. Mr. Keitel is always very conservative because obviously he does not want to give a low number and then have it come in high. The bidding process, we've sent some feelers out to the different landscape nurseries, both here in town and around the area. I don't have a good feel yet, but certainly I'd prefer to have more money than less as we go into the bidding process and be able to return it at mid-year.
Yeah, so Mr. Cross, do you need to comment as well? We had the amount of money that we needed, but probably would not have used it. But now in the budget adjustments, some of that money has been readjusted. So my concern is that the plans that we have and has been approved by council may not be funded at this point.
Councilmember McCutcheon, the budget adjustment that is part of tonight's discussion, it relates to the 2021 budget.
Mhm.
And I believe Mr. Vunich is talking about the 2022 budget.
Is that correct?
He should be talking about the 2022 budget. So the adjustments tonight would not affect what he's talking about as far as the Birch Forest turnaround.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Certainly.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Benich, is there any action that you're requesting or seeking from the council tonight?
No, sir, but thank you for asking.
Okay. All right. That takes care of the receipt and file. Going back to the informational items we include on that for this purpose, the agenda items that we'll be discussing or actually discussing and voting on later in the main meeting. And there's just a few things I thought we might to expedite our meeting. Sorry, Councilmember Edens. Oh, okay, go ahead with that.
Yes, I was just wondering, I had a resident contact us and myself and Councilmember Bartoni, just wondering if there had been a subdivision proposal for the 18 acres that's for sale that has been sold on Clayton Road near Turnberry. And I was under the understanding that there is not a proposal at this time. Is that correct?
Do you know? Mr. Benich, are you aware? Do you know what Councilor Edens is referring to?
It was originally two different parcels of land that got combined for a greater lot size. One's behind a single family dwelling and The for sale sign is very close to the second Windcrest entrance going towards Strucker, if that's helpful. And near Ziggs.
It's about a quarter of a mile east of Strucker.
Does Mr. Benich, I don't think city administrator knows. Mr. Benich, are you aware?
Mr. Mayor and members of the city council, I had heard that the property had sold. I had not heard if there was a plan for one lot and one home or multiple lots and multiple homes. Nothing's been submitted to the city yet. And certainly once something is submitted, Ms. Ripito, Mr. Newberry, and I will include it in the memo you receive each month now from committee regarding development trends and et cetera. Thank you.
That's what we thought. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. Moving into agenda items for the main meeting. One of the things that, as you know, is on the agenda is the reappointment of all members of the Watershed Erosion Task Force. And in my mayor's report to you on Friday, I mentioned, and I've discussed this with Councilmember Farmer separately and others, that the council, I suggest, might want to consider whether the current composition, and it will be reappointed tonight. If you like this idea, this will take a subsequent action from the council at its next meeting, whether the composition should continue to include both a representative from each ward and one of the two council members from each ward, or whether one option I mentioned in my mayor's report would be to keep each ward representative, citizen ward representative, and similar to the Historic Preservation Commission, have a couple of council members appointed as liaisons to it. There are other options as well, but I think the starting point is whether the council thinks that the WTETF should stay at its current composition, or whether it should be reduced by eliminating all or some of the council positions. And I just suggest this because it's pretty large. And I'm hearing from several council members that they don't think that it's necessary to have as many council members as we currently have. So that's why I'm presenting this for discussion. Councilmember Nayan.
I just had a question. Would it then be chaired by a representative from one of the wards and not a council person?
So I believe that there's no proviso for whether a chair be a council member or a citizen. My further understanding is I think the chair elect occurs after the reappointment at this meeting. Is that correct, City Attorney Young?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. So I think that's up in the air now. Chronologically, since the composition is currently both a representative from the council and a citizen representative from each ward, and when is that? Before I say this, when's the WTF going to meet next? Tomorrow, Wednesday. Okay, so since it will meet Wednesday if the council changes the composition, that composition will obviously still be in place. And so just in terms of looking at the numbers, the chair could come from this half or that half. So, Councilor Dodwell.
I would prefer that the chair be a council member representative, only because I think that they would have a little bit better understanding of process within the city to go through, and also have an immediate voice back to the rest of the council members. It could be a resource so that we're not hassling a citizen, I guess, for it. So that's just my suggestion, that we maintain a council member as the committee chair.
So that could be made part of, so if the council were to decide to decrease the composition, that could be an additional proviso on the resolution this would be in resolution format, correct? City Attorney Young, is that the way to do this best?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the resolution could provide that as well. Councilmember Edens.
I agree with Councilmember Dodwell, simply because I've been on the task force since it was started, and sometimes there's a lot of offhand comments made about the state of the budget by non-council members, and then we'll have council level discussions about the potential to dip into reserves. And granted, that was before we knew any state funds were going to be available. So often the mood of spending at council level didn't necessarily reflect any opinions or knowledge by citizen committee members. So I think it would be helpful if a council member was chairing. The other thought is I see the point of doing something like this. I certainly have at times felt like I've been spinning my wheels, or I'm unable to contribute in some ways on the committee. On the other hand, I know that because I've been on the committee, I've made sure that my citizens have been represented and included in a way that I'm not sure another liaison would be able to do, only because it's such a vast territory in the city to be responsible for. And council members have had to often go out on site visits to visit our own community locations with concerns, whereas the citizen volunteers haven't had to have that responsibility either. The catch-22 of all of this is, by adjusting the council members but not the citizens, is that the citizen turnover has been super high on that committee, my own ward included. I think Ward 2 has gone through 4 or 5 volunteers, and we're just as bad as several of the other wards. So that would be the negative, is that the consistency is leaving the committee, and the inconsistency and turnover is still there. So that almost makes me wonder, do we need 8 citizen appointees if we're having trouble filling the community volunteers? And we have had instances where we've had 3 people maybe from Ward 7 that want to do it, and no individuals from Ward 2. Are we?
So I think I've only reappointed 2 members of that from the citizen side.
Well, a lot. We've had a lot of resignations. Yeah, no more than that.
I don't know if it's maybe
Yeah.
3, but it's not any different. It's not any different. I'll say this: statistically, the reappointments are not any different than any other committee of that size. So, for example, the Community Outreach Task Force, there were similar, if not
that one
greater
too.
amount. You look at ARB, we've had several. So, I mean, I don't like resignations necessarily, but I think to put it in perspective, there haven't been any more than statistically on a comparative basis than most other similarly sized committees.
And is the term for citizens on this committee a reappointment every 2 years or one?
Every 1 year.
Every 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So maybe then what I'm seeing as other wards with resignations are just reappointments of a different individual for
Yeah.
turnover.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be it. I know.
I mean, I'm
mine-
not saying your reasoning isn't still there. though.
Sure,
I'm just-
sure. I know mine have been resignations in the middle of a term for our ward at least. And
Yep,
so
they were.
I don't have a good solution to this. I mean, I know that Dawn and I have put the work in to make sure our ward doesn't get left behind. But I don't know that we're also helping anymore either. So thanks.
You're welcome. Councilmember Galani.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak briefly in support of making the adjustment to the number of council members that are on the committee. I think I've been on the committee or task force, whatever you call it. And it just feels like there's too many people involved in those meetings as far as just the length that some of the conversations go into at some points, because there's just too many contributors in certain discussions and conversations that just seems to go on. And I think, when you have half the council that's part of the task force, it's going to come to council. Any recommendation or advocacy that the task force finds is coming to us anyway. And we have access to most of the meetings, from my standpoint, have been in regards to talking to scientists and folks, the USGS and those that are going to be doing studies on the different creeks and erosion throughout the city. And those are going to generate proposals and findings that we're going to review and look at anyway. So I don't see the need to have that many representatives from the actual council on. Citizens are the ones that are affected by the erosion. And so having them be the primary representation on that task force, in my opinion, is what makes most sense.
Thank you, Councilmember Farmer.
I mean, I don't disagree. It's a great big group of people, and we've done a lot of work so far to get to a pretty good point. I think, you know, adjusting some of the makeup of the task force would be a good thing. I also have thought for a while that I'm not sure that it's necessary to meet every single month. There are certainly times during the year and things that go on that require meetings relatively frequently, but for a lot of these things, you know, as Councilmember Galani said, I mean, talking to scientists and getting an understanding is great. And it's been very helpful, and we've moved this, I think, along very quickly, but I don't know that it is necessary to meet every single month. There are some things that are just sort of pretty repetitive about what we're trying to get done. I mean, we got the ball rolling pretty good so far. I certainly don't want to stop that, but I think that we're all in a lot of meetings. We do a lot. I'm always appreciative for everybody that comes, especially our citizen volunteers, but a lot of times, you know, it's the same 5 or 6 people speaking out of 16 or so people on the group. So I think it works.
So you're speaking in favor of reducing. If you don't mind me asking, Councilmember Farmer, what are your thoughts on 2 liaisons, 1 liaison, more than 2? What of the council? What do you think?
I don't know if it's possible to have sort of a fluctuating number. I mean, there are certain things that we are doing that are necessary in specific wards. And so in those cases, I think it is important for people that are in those wards to really understand what's going on. At the same time, as you know, Ms. Eden said, there is a level of advocating that goes on for specific projects at different points in time. So, I mean, I think generally speaking, everybody currently that is on the task force is of the same opinion that we're working on a set of priorities, and then once those are done, those priorities are going to move to a different thing. So, I mean, I think a handful of council members is a good thing to keep the conversation going more appropriately. But also, you know, I don't think we need 1 million people.
Of course, and I'm not speaking for or against your comment, but it's just factually, you know, like with the standing committees, for example, they by definition deal with and address issues that are, you know, in the various work. Of course, never mind, they got councilors on it. So strike my
Yeah, I mean, I would think if, like in the case of Ms. Edens, there was a spot in her ward that really needed to be looked at. There are other ones as well. And so I think whether you're on the committee or the task force or not, if there is a location like that in your ward, you're certainly very welcome to come and have that conversation, try to get that through the list.
The other thing too, is it the case, City Attorney Young, that, you know, the fact that all elected officials, all of us are we're ex officio members of, I know, the standing committees without the right to vote. Does that also apply to the WETF?
No, that's all. Excuse me. That's only for standing committees.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to know. Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I want to echo some of the things that Mr. Farmer said. Looking at this committee or this task force over the last few weeks and just listening to all of their meetings, they have done well. And if you listen, you do hear the same people talking. And so those fewer people have got a lot done. I would look at what is the data, what are the measurements we have, how many people are helping the task force and how many are not. So when you look at who's contributing, I think a smaller task force is all that's needed. I mean, I don't think the people are hurting anything, the extra people, but they're not contributing. And the co-chairs have done a great job with this, and they've put together a good plan, and they've implemented it, and they are going forward with it. Having two liaisons on the task force from the council, I think would be more than enough, because as liaisons, we're not there representing our ward. We're there representing the whole. And so we need to put that as almost secondary as our ward if we're the liaison, and look at it, the whole thing, and be a part of that team. But you could do it where if there's going to be something special on the agenda at a certain ward, invite that council member to that meeting, because they don't need to be there for every meeting. Just
So
my
you're
thought.
speaking in favor of
I am.
reducing the size. Okay.
Yes, I am.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yeah, just real quickly. This task force I've been on it since the beginning as well. And it's taken some reasonable steps, the 2-year study, the detention basin work, that's vital. Right now, the major projects that have been identified are all in Cox Creek. It's a Cox Creek task force, and that may change over time, but I don't see myself being able to affect anything that involves the Fox Creek watershed, which is the one near and dear to me. And so I think it makes sense to reduce the amount of people, but I think and local representation in Cox Creek watershed is probably important, but this the amount of projects could grow really fast if we get federal dollars, and we may need to adjust. And so I would suggest that, maybe we rejigger it, leave Cox Creek folks in it on a priority basis, and then reassess every year and see where the projects are gonna be. Because I get calls from people who are complaining about erosion problems. I can't do anything for them, and it feels ineffectual for me as a council member to say, well, we're not going to do anything in Fox Creek. So just from that perspective, it might be just helpful to everyone to sort of take it in watershed order or something like that. So,
Councilmember Edens.
I was just going to throw two things out there. And again, I don't know that either of them is the right answer, but when I look at how we did the deer task force, it was a subcommittee of, I believe it was the Board of Public Safety. And so since this is a task force, would it make sense for this to become essentially a subcommittee of something like Public Works? Because there is already, we already are working with Director Brown on those big budget construction items. He's already attending the meetings, although Director Vunich does have to as well. And then just a separate thought, which could be included with making it a subcommittee or not. What if the whole committee was just reduced by 50% across the board? So that would go 4 council members, 4 citizens, rather than 8 citizens, 2 liaisons.
Yeah.
But if it's a subcommittee and reports directly to another committee, that's how you get your council member involvement, and everybody has a chance to, get in on their ward's issues without duplicating attendance at that meeting or anything like that. So I just want to throw that out there.
So I
It's
think
two thoughts.
Yeah, I think your second thought relative to an alternate composition approach, fair enough, if that's what the council wants to do. I, for a number of reasons, would suggest that it remain reportable to the council and not be part of another committee, a subcommittee of another council. And I won't bore you with all the reasons for that, but I've got several of them. Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, I definitely object to lowering the number of citizens that are on that committee. And I don't think we should cut it to 4. I think we should have a representative from each ward.
From the council?
No, for residents.
Okay. So you're speaking in favor of the all resident representation and 2 council member approach? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion? Councilmember Galani.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we adjust the representation on the Watershed Erosion Task Force to 8 residents and 2 liaison council members.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Second. You can make a motion on to have this done, but the resolution will come to the council for approval. So there'll be another vote on that resolution. Okay, we have a second. Councilmember Edens, anything new?
Yes, I don't know. Can we, this could be an amendment unless it's okay with you guys. Can we include all council members as ex officio members of the committee, just the same way that we do with other committees? And also the liaisons are voting members, because that's not true with every committee.
You can include council members as ex officio members without the right to vote. If they want to attend, just like they do.
Correct. That's,
and
yep.
you can also, what was your second one?
That the liaisons are voting members of the
You
committee.
can also provide that the liaisons are voting. And I believe, just to close all the loops here, you caused me to think of something else. Thank you, that Councilor Dodwell mentioned, which is that the chair would need, you wanted the chair to be a representative of the council.
Yes. And if that's not amenable to the makers of the motion, then that's an amendment.
Is that agreeable? Are all those three things agreeable to you?
They are.
Are they agreeable to you? Okay, since the motion has been made, even though it's agreeable, all those things, three things are agreeable to the maker and the second. The motion's been made, so that means that the motion's in possession of the full council and cannot be amended unless it's voted on as an amendment, unless unanimous consent is given to change the motion. Is there any objection to the motion being changed to include those three items? Seeing no objection, that'll be the main motion. Councilmember Bertolino.
Yeah, question on the main motion then.
Sure.
Just curiosity, for those of you who have been participating, would you say that and this would impact my vote on this, would you say that the committee has passed the time of analysis, or as they know what needs to be done, and we are at the point of that committee driving home some finished projects? Are we at that, or are you still analyzing?
The chair, co-chair, Councilmember Farmer is indicating that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify a little bit, I would say we are at that place right now, but then I think that there will be an inevitable next cycle where we're going to start analyzing whatever is going to be after this. But this period is going to take some time to get through.
Okay. Any other discussion? See no further discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion carries. At the next meeting, there'll be a resolution to effect this change. But for tonight, at the meeting, the main meeting of the council, the composition will be approved as it currently is. Okay, Councilmember Dodd.
Do we need to word it? Would we be keeping any existing member from council who worked on this committee as potential chair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Getting a little ahead of ourselves, but since you brought it up, might as well put it out there.
That's why I did.
All right. Okay, next on the main agenda, we have Bill 2697, which is a change for the 2021 fiscal year. Mr. Cross, do you want to say anything about the basis for that and why that's needed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and council members. There are two processes like this throughout the year. There's the mid-year budget adjustment, and then there's the end of year budget adjustment. The purpose of the end of the year budget adjustment is now that we know the actuals, and this is done concurrent with the audit of the city's financial statements, which is being done right now. So our finance, Don Kaiser, finance officer, goes through, looks at the accounts, not every count, but any significant adjustments that need to be made to true up the budget to the actual, to make sure that the because as you know, there's a budget, then there is an estimated budget which reflects mid-year adjustments and then end of year adjustments, and that's what this process is. The actuals are, in fact, the actuals. There are at this point in time no adjustments from the auditors, and so the budget is being made equal to that. So there's really no.
So the bottom line is what's
The bottom line is when you adjust the revenues and you adjust the expenses, at the end of the day, there's a $25,000 change to the overall budget of some $16 million. So
this is a
it's
true up.
It is a true up of, as I said, the true up of the budget to the actuals, which in fact are the actuals.
Okay. Any questions from any member of the council on that? Councilmember Dodwell.
I just want to say thank you to staff and Dawn for putting together a good summary report that we could go through. It was very helpful to understand where the money was going to be moved from and where it was going to be placed towards.
Okay. And just so you know, I did have discussion with the city administrator about the potential for a second reading of this, because it really is, as he pointed out, in the scheme of things, a minor issue. And nevertheless, it does concern not only a monetary issue, it concerns the entirety of the budget. And I would recommend we not do that. So we're gonna have that on the next meeting. Okay. Bill 2698. This is also, I forgot to mention, second session items here. Because all the others we've already been through them and they're for second reading. So these are first readings. 2698 sidewalks for all wards. That is a $885,000 expenditure. Any questions for Mr. Brown or Mr. Brown, anything you want to mention on that while we're here during the work session?
Thank you, Mayor Bullen. No, I have nothing to add. This is our annual project for concrete street replacement. It does include some sidewalk work as well. We do have a new contractor, at least new from the standpoint we've not worked with them for a good decade, but we do have a new contractor that we're proposing for this year. But available for any questions at this time.
Any questions for Rick on the bill? All right. Next 2699 and actually 2699 and 2700. These are large items for sure, both relating towards 1 and 6. And this has to do with improvements to Highway 100. The first being at Pond Road, the second at Hinken Road. Rick, anything further you want to mention on these?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are the two projects that I think the council should be familiar with. We proposed cost share agreements. Previously, we were awarded the money. Now we just have to pass the agreement formally, essentially dot the I and cross the T. So that is what's in front of the council tonight, is the actual agreement that will obligate the money from MoDOT to fund the projects. MoDOT is contributing half the cost. The city will be picking up the other half, plus if there's any underruns, we pick up 100% of the overrun, excuse me.
Okay. Councilor Garritano.
Yeah, quick question, Rick, related to this. Have we heard anything from East West Gateway regarding our application?
Chair Garritano, or Councilmember Garritano, no, as of this point, I've not heard. It's still a little bit early, but we should be hearing something within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe, relative to the federal funding application for both projects.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown on either of these two items? All right. Bill 2701, continuing with you, Rick. This is a $65,000 expenditure relating to an agreement with Cochrane for capital improvement projects. Anything else you want to mention relative to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an agreement with Cochrane to provide materials inspection and construction inspection services for capital improvement projects. It'll be proposed to be a 2-year agreement. The total value is about $65,000. So it's something we do. Lately, we've done this on a 2-year basis, and they help us out on projects like the street replacement project, testing the concrete, making sure we have proper materials utilized and proper construction methods as well.
Okay. Councilor Clark.
Yeah, I had a question about some of the testing that they had listed, and bear with me, this is probably not even important to most, whether we know this or not, but it's important to me because I haven't had much experience in asphalt chemistry but in or concrete chemistry, but I have in asphalt chemistry. And I was wondering, I noticed that there's a few tests that they have listed that they don't have a test, a specific test number identified. So there's not, without that, we don't really have a test results that are required. So I was wondering if we could get information on the 2 asphalt tests that I'm assuming that they're based on the AASHTO T287 that was listed, but it is not listed. There's a asphalt binder content of HMA, which is hot mix asphalt, with washed gradation, ignition method. There's no test method listed. The asphalt calibration curve for nuclear asphalt content gauge, minimum 3 points. I'm assuming the normal plus 1 up, 1 down. And the concrete trial mix verification. Do they have specific requirements that they have to meet? Without that, we really don't have a test.
Councilmember,
Mr.
we're off to a check on that and get back to you if that's okay.
No problem.
Okay. Anything else under that item? Okay, moving next. Mary Cliff Historic Registry, probably no comments on that. That's just taking it off of tree. Bill 2703 is to affect Proposition 1 that the voters passed. Any questions on that? 2704 is a legal lot split consolidation, 3 legal lots. Any questions on that? And Mr. Vintage, while we're on that topic, is there a need for a second reading on that to help the resident or no?
Mr. Mayor, I believe the property owner would very much appreciate a second reading tonight.
Okay, so we'll plan, I'll raise that before the council, and if that gets the supermajority vote, we can do that. 2705 relates to the court, the agreement with the county. Mr. Cross, would you like to speak to that, please?
No, I don't know my name. I'm not gonna.
Oh, I know your name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really have anything to add to what is on here. This is an agreement that will allow the specialty court to more effectively and adequately handle some of the folks that fall into our judicial system that have some special needs in terms of drug issues and other issues. They will be handled in a much more humane and more engaged, involved process. So we're sending these types of folks from our municipal court to the folks in Clayton anyway, but they will stay there. They will get involved in the program. It'll cost us a little bit more. Right now, we're spending $300 per participant in the program. That will go up to $500 per participant. But it gives the St. Louis County courts a lot more latitude or involvement in this process and handling those types of individuals. I will ask with the mayor's permission if Mr. Young would like to add anything to that.
City Attorney Young.
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to add.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Cross? Councilor Dodwell.
Do we know what kind of impact that's going to have on next year's budget? Are we talking? I don't know how many people go through this particular process on an annual basis.
Councilmember Dodwell, the budget for 2022 is $1,500 for this line item. It's tough to estimate how many individuals will go through the program.
Okay.
but we'll be mindful of that. That's a great question. Because we should be. Okay, so just real quickly, we can wrap up here because we have a new procedure we have to handle outside. We need to start at 7. Give everyone a chance to take a break and get back. But just FYI, my plan would be with respect to the bills we just got through most recently discussing 2702, 2703, 2704, and 2705 to do those in mass. And also we'll do a second reading on the one Joe mentioned. And I would also ask that we do a second reading on Bill 2703, the Prop 1 bill. Okay. All right. Any concerns or comments on that? All right. So if there's no objection, we've made it through everything but the resolutions. And I think we can handle that at the time, given the subject matter. So why don't we take a, let's see, we've got about a 4-minute break here, go through the process we have to do, and then we'll get back and start promptly at 7 o'clock. Okay. We need a motion to adjourn the work session. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Flasher. It's non-debatable. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. The work session of the City Council is adjourned. We'll start at 7 o'clock promptly for the main meeting. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the meeting for the City Council for the City of Wildwood for Monday, April 25th, 2022. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Bolin.
Here.
Councilmember Galani.
Here.
Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Here, ma'am.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Councilmember Garritano.
Here.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Rainbow.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Nyan.
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
All right, thank you and welcome everyone and welcome to everyone who is with us in the council chambers this evening, as well as those who are joining us by Zoom. We are honored this evening to have with us Boy Scout Troop 677. They are here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And so we're going to turn it over to them. You're on.
Color guard, attention. Audience, please rise. Please place your right hand over your heart. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, halt. Please recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Color guard, honor your colors. Color guard, post the flag of the United States of America. Color guard, now honor your color. Color guard, return to rank. Audience, please be seated.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. Glad you're part of our community. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. This is going to be on the consent agenda for later in this session of the meeting, so we'll get to that momentarily. Public participation. Do we have any speaker cards? Travis, do we have anyone indicating with a raised hand that they want to speak? Okay, moving next to mayor announcements. At this time every year, I give a state of the city address. That's just been handed out to you, and I'm going to read it for those who are with us this evening, as well as those who may be watching. The city of Wildwood continues to be a solid value for our, I'm sorry, Councilmember Bartoni. That's going to be on the consent agenda. Oh, you're welcome. That's all right. The city of Wildwood continues to be a solid value for our residents. In my last State of the City address, I asked each of us as elected officials to seize the calling to solve some of the most longstanding issues facing our city. We have done that. One of our largest is the utilization of federal dollars to bring internet access to all of our city for the first time in its history. We have substantially improved our relationships with key Missouri legislators whose decisions impact the city and its residents. Our many accomplishments in this area include not only the time we spend in Jefferson City, but also the addition of a legislative consultant to our team who is there every day on our behalf. This has allowed us to make tremendous progress toward plans to address our watershed erosion issues with the potential to secure state funding. We have also recently completed a comprehensive 8-point strategic plan. This will guide us through 2025 for continuing to achieve key goals for our Wildwood residents. All of this has been achieved while remaining committed to balanced budgets. It has also been accomplished without asking our residents to pay more taxes. These results have been brought about in part because of the far better foundation we now have for governing. Unprecedented transparency, the inclusion of more residents on our team through application of voter-approved term limits, the addition of virtual participation at our meetings for residents and leadership, and most importantly, governing our city where each resident has an equal voice. Our residents followed our lead in their recent approval by more than 80% of a charter amendment to give us greater flexibility to work in service to them. Always being mindful that these seats we occupy belong to each one of our residents. Let us continue on our path of creating and furthering a place for our residents and businesses that is uniquely Wildwood. All right, moving next to a couple of proclamations. I'm actually going to do these in reverse order. I don't need that for this one. I will for the next one. Oh, thank you. So the second one is for Arbor Day. And we are a tree city. And as part of that, we are required to have a proclamation each year and for me to read that. So I'm going to do that. Trees provide many benefits, including reductions in heating and cooling costs, purification of the air we breathe, production of oxygen to offset harmful greenhouse gases, and provision of habitat for a variety of our wildlife. And whereas the preservation of mature tree stands located within the city of Wildwood has always been a key element of the city's master plan. And whereas the city of Wildwood has adopted ordinance number 2286, requiring the protection and restoration of this community's largest grand trees in residential, commercial, and industrial developments and settings. And whereas it has been one of my goals to maximize the use of green space in the city's rights of ways, parks, and private developments, and the reaffirmation of the green space requirements of our original town center plan. And finally, whereas the city of Wildwood has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation for 12 consecutive years, and the city desires to continue with that designation for 2022. Now, therefore, it is hereby proclaimed that Friday, April 29, 2022 shall be Arbor Day in the city of Wildwood, Missouri. All right, next we have another proclamation for the Daughters of the American Colonists. All right, so we have with us this evening Miss Jan Stevens. You may recall she was here a few weeks ago and has a great interest in history. And she's back again with another very important proclamation. This concerns the National Society of Daughters of the American Colonists. I'm just going to read this. Whereas the National Society of Daughters of the American Colonists was organized in the city of St. Louis, Missouri. Whereas the Missouri Society was organized as the fourth state society on May 26, 1921. Whereas the objectives of the Daughters of American Colonists is patriotic, historical, and educational, and includes such things as researching the history and deeds of American colonists and fostering appreciation of the United States of America and its institutions. Whereas 13 women were founding members of the National Society, of which 11 were founding members of the Missouri Society. Whereas the St. Louis chapter has among its members residents of the city of Wildwood, including Ms. Stevens, and whereas they will be celebrating 100 years of service in May 2022. Now, therefore, I, James R. Boland, Mayor of the City of Wildwood, on behalf of the City of Wildwood, do on this 25th day of April 2022, hereby proclaim May 1, 2022 as St. Louis chapter of the National Society Daughters of the American Colonists Day, and hereby recognize the St. Louis chapter of the National Society Daughters of American Colonists organization for all of its many contributions to the City of Wildwood and All right. so much. Okay, that takes us to public hearings. The first is liquor license application for Basil Spice Thai Court, DBA Thai Bistro. Could you please read that, Ms. Eldridge?
Liquor license application for Basil Spice Thai Corporation doing business as Thai Bistro, which is located at 2436 Taylor Road.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, anything you'd like to mention relative to this public hearing item?
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of items. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the liquor license application is prompted by a change in ownership. In reviewing that change in ownership, the commander of the Wildwood precinct of the St. Louis County Police Department has signed the application, as well as the Department of Planning. Therefore, if there are any questions from City Council, the department and the police would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get to that. Let's see if we have any speaker cards on this public hearing item. Either of you? Nope. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Bennett? I believe, unlike most hearing items, this is something the council can decide this evening. Is there a motion from the council? Anyone on the council? Councilmember Galani.
Sorry, I'd like to make a motion to approve the liquor license application.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Garritano. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, PZ 10-00, Robson from Highway 100. Would you please read it, Ms. Eldridge?
PZ 10-00, Stuart Monty Robson, 18962 Highway 100, Wildwood, Missouri, 63069. A request for certain amendments to the existing conditional use permit, CUP, and planned residential development overlay district, PRD, in the NU non-urban residence district and FPNU floodplain non-urban residence district, which would then allow for the inclusion of pet run areas as part of the use of site, along with the addition training programs and services, while clarifying architectural requirements for all structures and buildings, including fencing on this approximately 8-acre tract of land that is located at the intersection of Fox Creek Road and State Route 100, located number 26Y120124, street address 18962 Highway 100. The conditional use permit, CUP, and planned residential development overlay districts, PRD, currently authorizes the use of the subject tract of land for a veterinary clinic, the boarding and grooming of animals, and other related accessory activities.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bennett, anything you'd like to mention relative to this item?
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, as you recall, 2 weeks ago, the department noted that the bill had been introduced and that the public hearing would follow. Somewhat of an unusual twist. Tonight is the public hearing on this particular request. Also, the bill for final passage is on tonight's agenda as well. Just as a summary, the advertisement identifies 3 items that are subject of change. At the meeting 2 weeks ago, Councilmember Clark noted several modifications, and there is a substitute bill, so to speak, available tonight as well for consideration. With that, Mr. Mayor, after public comment, the department would be glad to try to answer any questions that the City Council may have in this regard. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any cards? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Bennett? Seeing none. Next is PZ 31-21, Wayland Custom Homes. Would you please read it, Ms. Eldridge?
PZ 31-21, Wesley Park, care of Mike Whalen, Whalen Custom Homes, 338 South Kirkwood Road, Kirkwood, Missouri, 63122. A request for a change in zoning from the R1 1-acre residence district with the conditional use permit, CUP, to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district for 1.39 acre parcel of ground that is designated the neighborhood edge district of the town center regulating plan and located on the east side of Center Avenue at its intersection with Bordeaux Walkway, street address 2630 Center Avenue, St. Louis County, located number 24V510034, Proposed use, a total of 4 single-family dwellings on individual lots of record with required street improvements.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vinich.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission has prepared for your consideration tonight its letter of recommendation. In that letter of recommendation, the Planning and Zoning Commission describes the subject tract of land, the area around that subject tract of land, and then information relating to the town center plan and master plan. Ultimately, the Planning and Zoning Commission is recommending approval of the change in zoning. The change in zoning would accommodate the development of 4 lots on this approximately 1.5 acre site. Key to this action was a discussion relating to Center Avenue. Center Avenue will be constructed as part of these 4 homes, at least in terms of the frontages. And there were also discussions relating to stormwater runoff and potable water. All of those have been addressed as part of the discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission. And again, tonight, this matter is in front of the City Council for public hearing. After public comment, the department will be available to answer any questions regarding the commission's action. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vinich. Any question, or I'm sorry, any comment cards or raise hands? Okay. Any questions for Mr. Vinich? Councilor Garritano.
I can make a motion for preparation of legislation at the conclusion of the public hearing, if that's appropriate.
Okay, you can do that now.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that the legislation be prepared for approval of this, I guess, this recommend,
CUP.
CUP, okay.
Okay, seconded by
This
Councilmember, that's all right. Second by Councilmember Galani. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. That takes us to unfinished business, second readings, which is historically what we do during the first session before we take a brief break and start the second session. Bill 2676 is in need of another postponement. Given that the contract is not completely done, would someone please be willing to make that motion to the next council meeting, postpone? Councilmember Ottenberg makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. Is there any discussion on the motion to postpone? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Moving next to Bill 2688. It's before the council final passage. It concerns Ward 1. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Clark, second by Councilmember Brost. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
We have 1 opposed to second reading. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2688.
An ordinance of the City of Missouri authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a municipal agreement by and between the City of Wildwood, Missouri and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for the construction and maintenance of a new roundabout on State Route 109, Route CC at Wild Horse Creek Road and South Etherton Road, second reading.
Okay. Mr. Brown, anything further you want to mention relative to Bill 2688?
Thank you, Mayor Boland. I have nothing further to add to the information, but I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2688.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
Councilmember Garritano.
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
No.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
All right, thank you. The bill passed and is in effect upon signature. Next is Bill 2689. I would ask if there's no objection that we deal with, we handle Bill 2690, which is next on the agenda first. And my reason for that is I think once we do that, Bill 2689 together with what is left on the agenda could probably be done in mass, and it might be. That's what we're getting ready to do. So once we do that, after handling Bill 2690, the rest of them, as I was saying, Bill 2689, 2692, 95, 96 can probably be handled in mass. I think we've done that previously with those. Okay, but we'll decide that here in a moment. Any objection to doing Bill 2690 as next on the agenda? Okay, Bill 2690 is for the council for final pass, concerns Ward 6. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Jaxi, seconded by Councilmember Rambo. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2690.
Bill 2690, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending existing planned residential development overlay district ordinance number 727 and its corresponding conditional use permit CUP by deleting in its entirety section 1 permitted uses, section 4M parking requirements, and sections 4V and X miscellaneous conditions, and thereafter replacing them with a new section 1 permitted uses, section 4M parking requirements, and sections 4V and X miscellaneous conditions, which would permit the installation of dog runs, establish the processes and standards for architectural review of certain structures, and allow for additional pet-related activities on the 7.9 acre site, with said action being consistent with the letter of recommendation completed and submitted by the Planning and Zoning Commission that is dated March 7th, 2022, second reading.
Thank you. I understand there is an amendment that has been prepared based on Councilmember Clark's comments at the last meeting. Is that correct, City Attorney Young?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, and that amendment has been provided to the council. Is that correct? Yep. Okay, Ms. Clark, anything you want to mention on that amendment, or do you want to make a motion to amend your
I
item?
want to make a motion to amend.
Okay, you want to make a
Okay.
motion to amend as presented to the council relative to your amendment. Is there a second to the motion to amend? Seconded by Councilmember Bros. So discussion will be first on the amendment, and depending on how that goes, we'll then go back to, or once that's handled, we'll go back to the main motion, either as it stands now with no amendment or as amended. Is there any discussion or questions on the amendment for Mr. Vintage? Is there anything you wanted to say relative to the amendment?
No, sir. Mr. Mayor, thank you for asking, but I'm available for any questions regarding the amendment.
Okay, any questions for Joe or Councilmember Clark or anyone else on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to amend as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Bill 2690 is now amended as presented and is before the council for final passage. Is there any discussion on the motion as amended, on the bill as amended? Councilmember Rambo.
Very quickly. Yeah, I looked at the kennels, particularly dog runs, can be loud. And these folks have been good neighbors. I looked on the maps, and also I drive by there all the time, and there appear to be roughly 4 homes that are within a few hundred feet of the place. You can't tell uphill, downhill what the terrain is like, and the sound deadening and so forth. But I'm supporting it because no one has complained, no one has called me, et cetera. And so the time for complaint, I guess, is over, and I'm just driving that stake in the ground. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the bill as amended? Seeing no comments, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2690.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Councilmember Garritano.
Yes.
Councilmember Fleischer.
Yes.
Councilmember Rainbow.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan.
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Okay. The bill passes and will be in effect upon signature. All right, moving next, we'll go back to Bill 2689, and actually the city attorneys recommended that we do handle this separately. 2689 is before the council for final passage. It concerns Ward 2. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Edens, seconded by Councilmember Bartoni. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2689.
Bill 2689, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, establishing the boundaries of the Special Circumstances Overlay District, SCOD, by including therein 5 legal lots of records, all being herein identified, with said action being consistent with the letter of recommendation completed and submitted by the Planning and Zoning Commission and dated February 7th, 2022, second reading.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on Bill 2689? Councilor Bartoni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think everybody's kind of familiar with this area that this SCOD has been proposed. So I've had quite a few residents, or a handful or so, that live in that area that have been told by somebody that if this SCOD passes, that they would, for some reason, need to disclose that if they ever went to sell their piece of property. So it's a legitimate question. I can understand the concern. So I called City Attorney Young and asked him to investigate if there's any validity to this statement. And I know that you can't provide legal advice to our residents, and I'm not asking you to do that, but can you share with the residents, people that are listening, what you found out regarding the question that I asked you?
City Attorney Young?
Yes, I reviewed the question you asked and I found no legal support for the conclusion and don't believe it to be accurate.
Okay, thank you. And, I don't know who started this rumor, but I wish they would stop, because they are putting unnecessary fear and into a lot of neighbors. And just please stick to the facts and let the facts speak for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Young.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2689.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Eden,
Yes.
Councilmember Bros,
Yes.
Councilmember Garritano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Okay, the bill is passed and will be effective upon signature. That takes us to 3 remaining bills, 2692, 2695, 2696. 2692 concerns Bluffview Landscaping, Ward 6, 2695, Metro West Fire Protection Control Signal System, Ward 7 and 8. And finally, Bill 2696, trail easement relative to the enclaves of Cherry Hills. Would there be any objection for these 3 bills to be handled en masse by any member of the council? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, I'm sorry, is there a vote for the second reading of bills 2692, 2695, and 2696? Made by Councilmember Hopper and seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please read bills 2692, 2695, and 2696.
Bill 2692, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into a city contractor agreement with Ideal Landscaping Group for the development of Phase 2 of the Bluffview Park project as indicated in the bid documents and specifications, which includes the base proposal and add alternates number 1 and number 3, in keeping with the documentation submitted by such in response to the city's advertisement. In this regard, second reading.
Okay.
That's one. Bill number 2695, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute an agreement by and between the city of Wildwood, Missouri and Metro West Fire Protection District for the installation, operation, and maintenance of a priority control signal system at city-owned and maintained traffic signals. Second reading. Bill number 2696, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute all documents and other items that are necessary to establish a multiple-use trail easement to the benefit of the city of Wildwood, Missouri within an existing common ground area of the enclaves at Cherry Hill subdivision, of which the 3 trustees have agreed and signed said instruments to this effect, and thereby improving such. Second reading.
Okay, thank you. So Joe, relative to bills 2692 and 2696, is there anything you would like to mention further for the benefit of the council?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for asking, but I am available for any questions or comments.
Councilmember Garritano.
Yeah, regarding Bill 2696, Mr. Vunich, I'm only seeing 2 of the 3 signatures from the trustees. Is that something I'm missing somewhere, or is there an explanation?
The third trustee did sign the document and it is available. And so it just didn't get tucked into the bill in time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joe? Rick, relative to Bill 2695, anything you want to mention?
Thank you, Mayor Boland. I have nothing further to add, but I've been again available for any questions from the city council. Thank you.
All right. Any questions on Bill 2695 for Mr. Brown? All right. Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bills 2692, 2695, and 2696.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Councilmember Garritano,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nyan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The bills pass. Will be effective upon signature. Turning into now to new business. First item is the certification of the April election, resolution 2022-9. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Made by Councilmember Garritano. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Clark. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
I have to read the resolution.
You want to read it? Go ahead.
Resolution number 2022-9, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, certifying the results of the April 5th, 2022 general municipal election.
Okay, thank you. So you recorded the passage though, right? You got that, the vote? Okay, unanimous. Okay, that takes us to the swearing in ceremony. So those council members who were on the ballot and were elected, congratulations to each of you. If you would please step around in front for the swearing in ceremony. You're fine.
Being first duly sworn on my oath. State that I possess all the qualifications prescribed by law. State that I possess all the qualifications prescribed by law. For the office of member of the city of Wildwood. For the office of council member of the city of Wildwood, St. Louis County, state of Missouri. That I will support the Constitution. That I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Missouri. The provisions of the charter of the city and all the laws of the state. The provisions of the charter of the city and all applicable laws of the state. The ordinances and laws of the city of Wildwood. And the ordinances and laws of the city of Wildwood, St. Louis County, state of Missouri. And faithfully commit myself to the office of and faithfully demean myself to the office of council member for the city of Wildwood.
Congratulations.
Floating head on top of somebody.
Okay, so that takes us to the last item on the agenda for the first session, which is the consent agenda. And that contains one item, the approval of minutes from the council's last meeting, work session and regular meeting. If there are no comments about the minutes, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, made by Councilmember Dodwell, second by Councilmember Hopper. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. With that, anything under miscellaneous? Anyone want to mention? Again, congratulations to each of the council members on their election to the bench. So that will take us to an adjournment. Before we adjourn, I just want to mention that we will take just a brief break. Councilmember Clark has been gracious enough to make cookies, which are on the stand right over here to your right.
They were really good.
Councilmember Clark.
I just had a miscellaneous.
Oh, I'm sorry.
but
Go
I had
ahead.
my hand up as high as I could get.
Oh,
it.
my apologies.
That's okay. With the new scan outside, I just want to make sure that we remember that if a person has a cochlear implant, that they should use the wand instead of go through the scanner.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Anything else under miscellaneous? All right. So once we adjourn, we'll take just a brief, probably like 3-minute recess. And we do have cookies, as I mentioned, and then we'll come back and we'll have the second session. All right. So I would ask for a motion to adjourn the first session made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. It's a non-debatable motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. So we'll take just a brief break here. as you can see, we have had a nominal move. Basically, you're right where you were. You're just looking east versus west and west versus east. Just to keep things fair here. So, okay. Welcome everyone to the second session of the City Council for the City of Wildwood. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the second session for Monday, April 25th, 2022. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Here.
Councilmember Nian,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Flasher,
Here.
Councilmember Garritano,
Present.
Councilmember Brost,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg, Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Here.
Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember Galani, Mayor Boland.
Here. Okay, welcome again. Public participation. Do we have any speaker cards? Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak with a raised hand? All right. Moving into mayor announcements and appointments. We have a few here. So the first is Mayor Pro Tem. My understanding is that we had one, at least one, we have one, any more than one? One.
No, we only had one submitted by the deadline.
From Councilmember Garritano to serve as Mayor Pro Tem. And I think by ordinance, we have to ask, are there any other nominations from the floor? So are there any other nominations from the floor? Seeing none, let's go ahead and have a vote even rather than do it by acclamation. Would someone please make a motion to approve Councilmember Garritano as Mayor Pro Tem, made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, City Council Liaison to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Did we have any interest in that one? Councilmember Roast.
I'll continue if everyone's good with that.
Okay. Anyone else interested in serving as liaison to Planning and Zoning Commission? Seeing none, would take a motion, please, for Councilmember Roast to serve in that capacity for the next year, made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Flasher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Congratulations to both of you in those positions. Next, this is really just something as a matter of formality to let you know about. So under our rules, the mayor at his or her option can sit as a voting member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. In other words, you don't have to do that. I believe historically every mayor has done that, and I do that. And at this time each year, I let you know that I'm going to continue to serve in that capacity. Next, we have council member. We're getting into committee assignments. Committee assignments and liaison assignments. Council member standing committees to our admin, public works, planning and parks, economic development. Council member liaisons that you've been provided with, and we also have those go to the liaisons to the Historic Preservation Commission. There are two council member liaisons to that, and to the Architectural Review Board, where there is one. And then we have council committee members, one on our Board of Public Safety. Councilmember Bertolino would be continuing in that capacity. And also our Wildwood Celebration Commission, Councilmember Garritano would be continuing in that capacity. Next, as I mentioned during the work session, the reappointment of everyone as it currently exists to the Watershed Erosion Task Force, subject to changing that composition as the council approved during the work session. And finally, the Ad Hoc Redistricting Committee, which is, and my apology, we had a little snafu over the weekend. That memo unfortunately was ready on Saturday, but we didn't get it ready until posted until today. And I take responsibility for that. But in any event, you were provided with each of the members, I believe, as they applied and their material came through. And the redistricting committee is a new one for us. All the rest of these are have been around for a while, so to speak. The redistricting committee, as I point out in the memo to you, is the result of our charter provision, which requires after each decade census that the city appoint a redistricting committee to look at those census results and to decide whether any boundary changes in our wards, our 8 wards, should occur, and if so, what those changes should be. A couple of things about that redistricting committee. First is that there's one member only from each ward. Second, that member cannot be an elected official or an appointed official. And lastly, unlike our other appointments, the appointments to the redistricting committee by the mayor have to be approved by a supermajority 2/3 vote. All right. Any questions on that? Councilor Adolfo.
Just real quickly, do they vote for a chair of this committee, or are they all at the same level?
They will vote for a chair of that committee.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. Councilor Farmer.
I just have a quick question about the watershed thing. Since we're meeting on Wednesday, do we need to change anything?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. That'll happen at your next meeting, assuming the council passes the resolution at the meeting between now and then. Okay. So with all that background, would there be any opposition to handling the council committee assignments, council liaison assignments, council committee member assignments, and the WETF in mass? And then we'll do the redistricting committee separately because of the supermajority vote. All good with that? Okay. I would ask for a motion to approve all of those assignments and appointments as presented, made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember McCutcheon. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the appointments, I'm sorry, in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those are approved. Congratulations to each one of you and to the WETF members. Finally, the Ad Hoc Redistricting Committee, I would ask for a motion to approve that as presented. Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hold on. Just a minute. We have our city attorney checking something.
Yes, section 7.5 subsection B requires that each member appointed by the mayor must be individually approved by a 2/3 of the members of the city council.
So that would be a separate vote for each one then. Okay, thank you, City Administrator Cross, for bringing that up. All right, so we'll start with Ward 1. Is there a motion for, should the motion be made for each one individually as well, or is the motion in mass, or the motion for approval of all of them? Okay.
For each one individually.
Okay, so for Ward 1, would someone like to make the motion? Councilmember Clark.
I will make that motion.
Okay, and this is, I'm trying to find the document here. Hold on. Thank you. Dan Leslie. So the motion by Councilmember Clark is to approve Mr. Dan Leslie. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Bros. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, Ward 2, Michael Garrett. Councilmember Edens makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Bartoni. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Ward 3, Dave Sandberg. made by Councilmember Ottenberg for approval, seconded by Councilmember Nyan. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Ward 4, Ray Edwards. Councilmember Dodwell makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Farmer for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of Mr. Edwards, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, Ward 5, Mr. Dan Glowski, made by Councilmember McCutcheon for approval, second by Councilmember Bertolino. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ward 6, Mr. Matthew Kelp. Motion is made by Councilmember Jaxie, seconded by Councilmember Rambo. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ward 7, Mr. Dave Williams, made by Councilmember Hopper for approval, second by Councilmember Flasher. Any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And finally, Mr. Stephen Peterson from Ward 8, made by Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Garritano. All in favor of the motion for appointment of Mr. Peterson, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Mr. Peterson is appointed. All right. Thank you for going through that. And thank you again, Mr. Cross and Mr. Young. All right. That takes us into Bill. I wonder, I got the wrong thing. $26.97 is before the council for first reading, and it concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Hopper, seconded by Councilmember Ottenberg. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 26. Sorry, hold on. 2697. Did I say 97 or 98?
97.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Please read Bill 2697.
Bill number 2697, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, revising the budget for the city of Wildwood, Missouri for the fiscal year commencing on January 1st, 2021 and ending on December 31st, 2021, first reading.
Okay. Mr. Cross, anything further you want to mention relative to this?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor, but I am available for any questions.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Cross? All right. Seeing none, this will be on the council's agenda for its next meeting. Takes us to Bill 2698. It's also for first reading and concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Bros, seconded by Councilmember Nyan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2698.
Bill 2698, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement on behalf of the city with M&H Concrete Contractors Incorporated for the FY 2022 concrete street and sidewalk replacement project, including traffic control and other incidental items as shown on the project specifications and drawings, first reading.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, anything further you would like to mention relative to Bill 2698?
Thank you, Mayor Boland. I have nothing additional, but I'm available for any questions from the council.
Okay, perfect. Any questions for Rick? All right, seeing none, the bill will be on the council's agenda for its next meeting as well. That takes us to Bill 2699. Before the council for first reading, it concerns wards 1 and 6. And I would also suggest, if there's no opposition, it doesn't sound like there would be based on our work session, if there's no objection, take Bill 2699 and 2700 together. They concern the same subject matter. Both concern wards 1 and 6. The first relates to improvements at Pond Road, the second to Hinkin. Is there any objection to that? Okay, see no objection. Bills 2699 and 2700 are before the council for first reading concerning wards 1 and 6. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Brost, seconded by Councilmember Jaxi. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read bills 2699 and 2700.
Bill 2699, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a cost share agreement by and between the city of Wildwood, Missouri and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to obtain state funding for the design and construction of intersection improvements on State Route 100 at Pond Road and at State Route T in the city. First reading. Bill number 2700, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a cost share agreement by and between the city of Wildwood, Missouri and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to obtain state funding for the design and construction of turn lane improvements on State Route 100 at Manchester Road / Bunis Lane, Woodland Meadows Drive, Hinkin Road, and Hawks Rest Road / Windy Hollow Lane in the city. First reading.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, anything additional you would like to mention relative to either of these bills?
Thank you, Mayor Boland. I have nothing additional to add at this time, but again, available for any questions from the city council. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Brown or any comments relative to bills 2699 or 2700? Okay, that takes us to bill 2701. It's before the council also for first reading, and it concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read bill 2701.
Bill 2701, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city consultant agreement with CB Engineering Incorporated, doing business as Cochrane, for construction, inspection, and materials testing services for capital improvement projects for the city. First reading.
Mr. Brown, anything you want to mention relative to this bill?
Thank you, Mayor Boland. I have nothing further, except I do have a homework assignment for Councilmember Clark, and I will respond to her before the next meeting. Otherwise, I'm available for any other questions.
Okay, thank you. And would you please, you may have intended to do this, but would you mind, if there's no objection, copying the rest of the council on that response so they can be kept in the loop?
Absolutely, sure.
And me too.
Okay.
All right. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Rick? All right. That takes us to bill 2702 concerning the removal of the Mary Cliff residence from the Wildwood Historic Registry. 2703, which is affecting Proposition 1 passed by the voters 80+%. 2704, consolidation of 3 legal lots, and 2705, which is the agreement relating to the municipal court services with the county that was discussed in in work session. Would there be any objection for these 4 bills being handled in that? All right, with a single vote. Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, would you please read bills 2702, 2703, 2704, and 2705 concerning Ward 6, all wards, Ward 8, and all wards respectively? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bills? Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Brost. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Now, Ms. Eldridge, would you please read the bills?
Bill number 2702, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, rescinding the current designation of the Mary Cliff residence to the city of Wildwood's historic register per the request of the property owner, with this process being consistent to applicable provisions of Chapter 440 Historic Preservation and Restoration Code of the Municipal Code, and adhering to the letter of recommendation prepared and submitted by the city's Historic Preservation Commission on this matter, which is dated January 27th, 2022, first reading. Bill number 2703, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending section 110.130 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, and providing for regular meetings of the city council. First reading. Bill number 2704, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing the consolidation of 3 legal lots of record into a single parcel of ground, such being lots 7, 8, and 9 of Grover Heights, section 12, township 44 North, range 3 East, and more specifically situated on the southwest corner of the intersection of East Avenue and Manchester Road, to be hereafter known as Grover Heights Lot 7A, and thereby creating a 0.69 acre tract of land. First reading. Bill number 2705, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a contract for municipal court services, specialty courts by and between the city of Wildwood, Missouri and St. Louis County, Missouri for participation in the St. Louis County Municipal Court Specialty Courts Program. First reading.
Okay. Joe, do you have any comments on Bill 2702, Bills 2702 or 2704?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, but I'm available for any comments or questions. And as you asked, Bill 2704, a second reading would be appreciated by the property owner.
Okay, we'll get to that momentarily. And Mr. Cross, anything further? I know we discussed this in work session relative to the St. Louis County Court Agreement, Bill 2705.
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Does any member of the council have any questions on any of these four bills? Councilmember Bartoni.
I don't necessarily have a question, but unless any of the departments opposed, I'd make the motion that we have a second reading on all four of them.
Let me look at this real quick. That one, no. Okay, fair enough. And I just had a side discussion with the city attorney. We can do that in mass as well. So you're going to make a motion for second reading of all four of these bills?
Correct.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Councilmember Dodwell. As you know, this will take a supermajority 2/3 vote. All in favor of the motion for second reading of bills 2702, 2703, 2704, and 2705, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Supermajority requirement is met. Ms. Eldridge, would you please read bills 2702, 2703, 2704, and 2705?
Bill 2702, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, rescinding the current designation of the Mary Cliff residence to the city of Wildwood's historic register per the request of the property owner, with this process being consistent to applicable provisions of Chapter 440 Historic Preservation and Restoration Code of the Municipal Code, and adhering to the letter of recommendation prepared and submitted by the city's Historic Preservation Commission on this matter, which is dated January 27th, 2022, second reading. Bill number 2703, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, amending section 110.130 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, and providing for regular meetings of the city council, second reading. Bill number 2704, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, reauthorizing the consolidation of 3 legal lots of record into a single parcel of ground, such being lots 7, 8, and 9 of Grover Heights, section 12, township 44 North, range 3 East, and more specifically situated on the southwest corner of the intersection of East Avenue and Manchester Road, to be hereafter known as Grover Heights Lot 7A, and thereby creating a 0.69 acre tract of land, second reading. Bill number 2705, an ordinance of the city of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a contract for municipal court services, specialty courts by and between the city of Wildwood, Missouri and St. Louis County, Missouri for participation in the St. Louis County Municipal Court Specialty Courts Program, second reading.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion or questions on any of these four bills? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll of the council for final approval of bills 2702, 2703, 2704, and 2705.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Nian,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Garritano,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxi,
Yes.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
I'm going to relish being last here for a second. Yes.
That'll happen again 16 times from now. All right. That takes us to resolutions. We have two. Resolution 2022-10, which deals with $24,000 expenditure for ash trees, and resolution 2022-11, which addresses or handles the agreement with Wilson Hydro pertaining to an analysis for Cox Creek at a $12,000 expenditure. That concerns all wards, and the first resolution 2022-10 concerns several wards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Would there be any objection to handling both of these resolutions collectively? All right, seeing none, is there a motion for approval of resolution 2022-10 and 2022-11? Made by Councilmember Nyan, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Ms. Eldridge, would you please read the resolutions?
Resolution number 2022-10, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement on behalf of the City of Wildwood, Missouri with Shawnee Mission Tree Service Incorporated, doing business as Arbor Masters Tree and Landscape for the treatment of ash trees located within the public rights of way in the city to prevent infestation by the emerald ash borer pest, including other incidental items as shown on the project specifications and documents. Resolution number 2022-11, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with Wilson Hydro LLC to provide specific and defined engineering investigations and analysis for the same regarding 6 detention/retention basins in the upper reaches of the Colts Creek watershed, thereby determining if these features can be upgraded and retrofitted and provide more advanced stormwater management accommodations than in their current forms.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Benich, is there anything you'd like to mention relative to resolution 2022 I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, is there anything you'd like to mention relative to resolution 2022-10?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing additional, but again, available for any questions at this time.
Any questions for Rick on the ash trees? All right, seeing none, Mr. Benich, on resolution 2022-11, do you have anything you'd like to mention on the Wilson Hydro agreement?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, but I am available for questions as well. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Joe relative to that? Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, I just have a question about some of the, one of the details. I know that's surprising. But, I noticed that our resolution includes the both retention and detention basins, but the Wilson Hydro project description refers only to detention basins. Does that mean that they only are working on those, or is that all we have?
Mr. Benich.
Ms. Clark, the city has a mix of detention and retention basins. Probably the largest retention basin of notoriety is Lake Chesterfield. In this particular instance, the department was hoping that if there are potential options beyond just detention, that we would be inclusive of those. And in certain instances, we may make detention retention. So that's the rationale. Thank you.
Councilor Clark.
Follow up. So should Wilson Hydro have that in their project description that it's both? Because right now they only have detention basin.
I think they are being conservative in that we're looking at 6 detention basins, but we don't know what their engineering analysis will eventually lead us to.
Thank you for the questions. Any other questions for Joe or any questions for Rick on either of these resolutions? All right, seeing none, all in favor of approving the motion to adopt both resolution 2022-10 and 2022-11, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolutions are adopted. That takes us to the consent agenda, approval of expenditures. Any comments or questions on expenditures? If not, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Made by Councilmember Farmer, seconded by Councilmember Jaxie. All in favor of the motion? I'm sorry, any discussion on the motion? See no discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. That takes us to miscellaneous. Anything under miscellaneous? Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of questions about deer management. Can we get an update on where that committee is?
Mr. Cross?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember McCutcheon. It will be on the agenda for the next admin PW committee meeting, which will be in early May. And the report has been worked on by the subcommittee of the admin PW committee will be bringing that report to the committee for discussion. And then depending on when it comes out of that committee to council.
Thank you.
Anything else under miscellaneous? Councilmember Dodwell?
Do we have any movement ahead on the sidewalk project for Strecker Road? You don't need to go into details.
You want to address that one? Mr. Cross? Or not?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Dodwell, the short answer is no. There's no movement on the sidewalk at this point in time.
Anything else under miscellaneous? Councilmember Farmer?
Yeah, I've been getting some questions, I imagine, because baseball season is back about that intersection at West Glen Farms and Truman that we talked about last year. So I was just wondering what's up with that.
Well, we have, so subsequent to there was an email I sent a few weeks ago to you and Councilmember Dodwell. I don't think anyone else relative to that, just because it's your ward. Nothing since then, but basically for everyone's benefit, as that email mentioned, we, and myself included, have had discussions with Mayor Romerman from Ellisville about options. And Steve has had discussions with MoDOT as to what they would be willing to sign on to. And my understanding is it's with MoDOT at the moment. No. Okay, who's it with and what are we waiting? I know we're waiting on something. So what are we waiting on with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have discussed this with my counterpart, Bill Schwer, city manager for Ellisville. We have been trying now for a week or so to catch up with Mayor Romerman to discuss the alternatives. I sent Bill Schwer an email today because I had not heard by the end of the week. And so he's checking with Mayor Romerman. So I am hopeful that we will be able to catch up with the mayor this week and have that conversation. Thank you.
I'll catch up with the mayor. That's what we're waiting on. So I knew there was something there. Any other questions on that, Councilmember Farmer? Okay. Anything else under miscellaneous? Councilmember Garritano.
Sure. Just a quick question. I was in Jefferson City and observed the award that the Historic Preservation Commission received. It's called the McReynolds Award. And it was a wonderful ceremony for our folks to be able to be recognized for the marker program that has completed here in the city. So just wanted to pass that along. Great group, and they got recognition from the Municipal League. It's going to be coming up in the next edition of the Review, their magazine, and others as well. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to Councilor Nine for bringing that to our attention previously. Councilor Bertolino.
Yeah, and the theme of recognition, our very own Colonel Jackson was recognized in the paper this week as Teacher of the Week. And as a student voted, and so congratulations.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Anything else under miscellaneous? Councilor Bartoni.
Maybe just as important, but thank you, Teresa, for the cookies.
Councilor Dodwell.
I'd just like to thank everybody at the dais here for rerunning again, for bringing back this great group of men and women to help decide things for the city of Wildwood. It's a pleasure working with every one of you, and I'm glad everybody's back again.
Thank you. Anything further under miscellaneous? What a great note on which to end. Thanks to all of you for another great meeting. Motion to adjourn, please. Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, second by Councilmember Galani. Non-debatable. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned.